Howdy, howdy, fellas. Got a World of Warships Legends match in the Picardie today. I haven't made a video in a while. I just haven't been feeling it. I've been busier with other stuff. I just haven't felt inspired to make a video. Rough matchmaking. I've been playing a lot of the same ships. I just feel like I gravitate more towards ships that I know that I can carry in because even then, I just have rough rough seas out there. Uh, But I had this match the other day. It's actually a little while ago now. But I constantly find this ship, you know, underrated, maligned, not appreciated. I love it. It's one of my favorite secondary ships at the tier. I don't play a ton of secondary ships these days. Kind of off of it. I just prefer to be in control, and the XP nerf is annoying. It's not the only thing to play for, but this right here, this is the big thing about this ship, is it's got improved armor pin on these 130 millimeter secondaries. They all pin 32 millimeters, which is an incredibly important threshold at the tier. You can do raw damage to battleships, and I find that for my preference, I just like the damage. It's got a high fire chance. The fires per second on something like the Flander, which is an obvious comparison, will be higher just because they have the more barrels, faster reload on those 100 millimeter mounts, but they only pin 17 millimeters of armor. They can't even pin destroyer hulls. That is annoying to me. I do not like it at all. One of the other things I like about this ship is the mounts seem very survivable. I am running it with Latier, which lets you mount. He's like a secondary specialist. Love this guy. Increases damage. I'm running Brawler on Picardie because it can't hit anything or pin anything at range anyway. But he gets Porcupine, properly Meticulous, and Master Mechanic. And then you got your choice down here. I'm a fight fire with fire guy. I think it's just the best, most consistent overall. I hear people talking about the proc, the removed damage over time when you get the 3 when the damage control party is on cooldown. No, it's that other part. Fire damage to your ship for each active fire. So 12% less on one fire, 24% less on two fires, 36% less on three fires. Is that right? Yeah, math is hard. Yeah, it's 45 if I maxed him, which I'm tempted to, but I just don't play that many secondaries. Anyway, I like Picardie. It's small. We can look like next to the Flander. Like, look at how much bigger the Flander is. That is a huge target. The two middle guns are 360 degrees. They are unreliable and inaccurate. Uh, let's see. Bad pin, but honestly not awful. I think people underestimate these guns, which is part of the reason I made this. Like, they're cruiser guns. If you come looking at this thing as like, oh, it's a battleship, I got to do battleship things. Like, treat these much more like a cruiser gun. You'll have a better time. 550, 297. That's like a 203 caliber pin. So yeah, it can be. Nope, that's we got it all premium. Hold on, we need American. That's what we want to look at. You look at something like the AP on the Baltimore, and it's like that's similar. Sure, it's a cruiser, but no one says the Baltimore has terrible AP. Yeah, I get it, but you know, Picardie's got treat it like cruiser guns. That's what you want to be doing. Use the HE when you're out at distance, but when stuff gets closer, shows broadside. Use the AP, man. It's 7,450 damage, but you've got 16 barrels. With this build, you've got a 24-second reload because again, I am running Brawler. Again, can't hit anything at range anyway. Horrible shell grouping. So again, I get it, but like, it's not awful. Don't ignore it. Okay, let's go check out the match. Alright, so here we are in the match. I've sped this up. I realized I should have thrown up my stats. Just, again, like, I haven't played a ton of matches in it, but enough, like, I've done alright in it. So, this is Atlantic, capture the base. This is not an ideal map or match type for this ship. You know, you've got the big open ends and then all the island cover in the middle. I find on these secondary ships, especially ones that don't have torpedoes, you know, honestly, I don't like Atlantic all that much anyway. But yeah, this is not. When I queued into there, like when the match started and I saw it was Atlantic, I was like, and capture the base, like, yuck. This is not a match I want to be in the Picardie, really. But it ends up being alright. So we're trying, basically from the beginning, we're trying to move in behind this middle island. Something's going to happen around this thing. Either stuff is going to come down the east flank, stuff's going to come down the middle, or they're going to come down the west flank. And so being on this island, I have 11-kilometer range on my secondaries. I have the greatest chance of being in a position to put those to use. And I can have cover behind the island while I kind of see how the game plays out otherwise. Speaking of that AP, I've used HE up to this point. Meh. But we see this broadside Baltimore, and again, use the AP. It's a shotgun, sure, but don't ignore it, and we get 10k on a Baltimore. Sure, you might have dev struck it in another battleship. Like, I'm not denying that. I won't pretend that that's not the thing. But I shoot that thing with the Flander, and I get all over pins. And I get it. Like, I just, for whatever reason, the Flander just doesn't jive with me. Uh-oh, torpedoes. Here's one where I think that smaller footprint of the Picardie and a super lucky hull of a, I guess, yeah, that was a friendly destroyer, bails me out there. You know, and it's just like, this thing is kind of small, it's got a decent turning circle. I don't know 100% if it accelerates or decelerates faster than the Flander. It feels like it does, but that may also be just because of the ridiculous top speed of the Flander. And here, our secondaries are going. We're not getting great hits on the split, but enough. And again, to contrast with the Flander, which I think is the reasonable comparison. They actually do damage. Speaking of damage, in my usual Picardie fashion. Oh yeah, so that was a trash salvo on the Baltimore. He was turning out anyway. Whatever. Yeah, I won't berate you with it and just beat a dead horse, but like, this thing's not a main gun ship, but don't ignore them. Either if you're facing it or if you're playing it. Yeah, so taking shots as we see them, and again, those 360-degree turrets in the middle. I didn't actually see how much damage I did to the Baltimore, but 2 pins and 3 overpins, so not amazing, but okay. Another thing about these 305s that I really like, they have a lower arming threshold than the 380s. So you're going to get more of those kind of random pin chunks that would be an overpin with a 380. So the accuracy doesn't necessarily penalize you as much as it might on the 380s, for what it's worth. Here, we're getting a few hits on these. You're not going to instantly mulch a destroyer at 10 kilometers as this Sashio is, but you do a little plinking damage on him. It does add up, and the rest of our team's on that guy anyway. Not 100% sure what his game plan was, but we lost a destroyer early. They have one that YOLOs down the middle, straight into the cap. He might have honestly been like just AFK full speed ahead. I'm not 100% sure. But he goes down, fairly even at this point. Get a split, get out of Brutzy. Like, this game's kind of going back and forth. Again, you can see I'm not getting a ton of secondary action with this positioning. A lot of the red team is either on the immediate other side of the island. I can't realistically just push around into them. That is a BA Tirpitz, one of my other preferred secondary ships of the tier. I'll be hard-pressed to pick between the two. I've probably done better in the Picardie, but the BA Tirpitz has, again, more secondaries that do the actual damage, and it has the torpedoes, which I quite like. It actually has fantastic torpedoes. Um, let's see, a little faster. Oh, Picardie does have 12.4 concealment. That's really good for a tier 7 battleship. Um, you know, I think that's something that's underrated. I haven't done the math to see if the Flander will close the distance from its spotting range to secondary range faster than the Picardie, but I think that oversimplifies that discrepancy. You know, I think of it as like a damage gap. When you're spotted but can't get your secondaries engaged, that's something that I look at in ships. And so having a smaller gap, I think, is valuable, but also being able to close that gap. Flander is faster than the Picardie, but the Picardie is fast enough. It's like 31 knots or something, 30.9, I believe. So it's fast enough. And then also sometimes, you know, you're not just doing full speed ahead straight into a stationary target. To like, the extra speed on the Flander might not be as impactful. And here you can see I've got something at 12.7. I'd be spotted right now in the Flander, not in the Picardie. So, smoke firing penalty, another benefit on these. I'm not 100% sure the Bortus would see me. If I had fired Flander, it might have had island cover, but I think I might have been envisioned there, and that the smoke firing penalty, I should have checked that, what it is on these guns. But again, there's I don't want this to come across as like the Flander's bad and the Picardie is good. They are for me like that, but no. But more seriously, I think there are a lot of subtle differences in ships that don't always show up in the stats that people tend to pay attention to, that I think matter more than is sometimes given credit for, especially if you can play it to those strings. Yeah, and then Bortus goes broadside like... Doesn't matter how inaccurate your guns are when there's a British cruiser broadside at whatever that was, 8 kilometers, like, yeah, you're going down. Again, you see, look, I'm aiming up on the turrets. Treat it like cruiser guns. 3 pins, 2 over pins. 5 out of 16 isn't amazing, but it's not horrible either. So we're just chunking them down. Kind of a slow match so far. Again, to the point of not the best match for this ship. But also to illustrate, sometimes you just take your time. The other match that I posted on this right after it came out, one of my first videos, I went like ham, super deep. I was lagging, made a terrible choice, and like barely scooched out with my life. And then came back and did a lot of damage. This one's kind of the opposite. I'm skirting around, playing it conservatively. I tend to do this on capture the base maps, because if everyone left the base and that Asashio came in, we might not be able to get back in time depending on how far out people are. So we're playing this one a little more conservatively, and also just how the match developed. I kind of had something to do or go for pretty much all the time. And yeah, right here it's like, I'm in second range of a lot of these cruisers, but this is a lot of stuff on me, so let me see if I can kind of slow down, keep stuff in secondary range for a second. I would love to get that Baltimore down, and I don't want to sail out of range of this mines if I can, but I also don't want to take a ton of damage for everything, and that's starting to hurt. He is angling in, so I've got HE loaded. Let's get a whack on him, and let's see how, yeah, 4,300, I'll take it. Cruiser guns, seriously, think of them as cruiser guns. Take out the high caliber. We're plinking away at him. Yes, 650, like, it adds up. I really want the guns to get on that Baltimore. If we can get him out of here, that would be great. I dropped spot. I had taken a fair amount of damage in that, but I meant to specifically check. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think I lost a single secondary mount in that. Let's see. Can we see they're all firing? I think they're all firing off the starboard side. Might have one down, but sorry to compare it again. Flander, like, if you guys play that thing, you know you don't have anything left after that. All that HE coming in. So here I am doing a somewhat dangerous turn in front of the turrets, but I'm fairly certain that I beat him in a secondary duel. But what I definitely don't win is if I run face first into a bunch of torpedoes. Citadel and the Champagne. It can be a difficult ship to Citadel just because it's so small and narrow, kind of that no armor, best armor kind of ship. But yeah, so we're pew-pewing away at the Turpits in secondary range. Looks like we've got a fire on him, so if I can actually duck out of spotting range, which I'm close to on him, and if I can get another shot on that Chamfon, that would be ideal right here. I have 2 heals left, and you see a lot of the damage that I've taken is healable because of all that HE damage. So I'd like to get this heal off before I re-engage on the Turpits. Let's see, I'm debating, do I take the shot? How are they? Where are they? Chamfon was at the very edge of my range, so I don't. I get the heal going and I'll let it tick up for just a little bit before I get respotted, but I do really want to take some shots at these, especially because they are basically at max range for me. The damage control party's up. I'm heading away from them, they're heading away from me. In about 2 seconds, I'm going to be out of spotting distance anyway. 5 overpins, whatever. Team's still doing some work up at the top. That's nice to see. Let's see, do we take any more here? Oh, we did lose a turret. That's one of the things, let's see, this wasn't a battleship heavy match, only 2 battleships. You will lose your guns. Yep, mine CE, pelt me with HE, as they do. So we're just kind of slowly turning back around here. And we're going to head back into re-engage. We've got points. We've got ships threatening their base. 2 battleships, the cruisers headed that way, and a destroyer. So at this point, this match should be locked down. Actually, even looking at the match, there's only 2 minutes left. There's no way they can get in. At this point, let's farm some damage. I mean, why not? We've got 2 ships over there. I don't want to be too gung-ho. So you see I'm kind of playing it a little cagey. Odds are decent. You know, the mines is going to be... It's likely to be less than my spotting distance. The Turpits, I believe, is 12-7 with concealment mod. So I should spot him first. I think it may be a touch faster than the Picardie, but they're similar. I cannot actually remember offhand. OG Turpits. I can't remember. They're just over 30 knots as well, so... oh, here we see the mines. Raise him up, send him out. Hope he stays broadside just enough. And I mean, look, it's a shotgun, but it is a shotgun. And hey, sometimes you get lucky. 3 citadels. Cruiser guns, like, they're not battleship guns, they're cruiser guns. Treat them like that. You'll do better. I like to use the reload boost if I see a broadside target and want to, you know, shell swap. If I've got kind of the wrong, quote-unquote wrong, honestly mostly for broadside cruisers. If I've got HE loaded or if I think I can get a second shot off. That's mostly when I use the reload boost. Any other tips on this thing? Yeah, just stay alive. I mean, the heals are... They're improved. I went and checked. I think of them as like, oh, they're almost super heals, but realistically, they're very similar to the Flander heals. They are a little bit better, but because the Picardie has less health, they heal a larger portion of the thing, which in some sense is like whatever a heal is a heal. But you got to remember that things like floods and fires actually work off max health, so makes them relatively more useful for flood and fire damage, which is relevant for a battleship. Yeah, I think we did a good job there.